Welcome to Solutions with Courtney Anderson. I am Courtney Anderson. This is the 183rd episode of this program. Yay! I am so happy to be here, and I'm thrilled that you are here with me. This is one of the shows that we have as part of the HR Heroes Hangout. Of course, our HR Heroes Hangout series is all about human resources, HR, the people who volunteer to serve and serve extraordinarily well in human resources departments and leadership and consultancies and educational departments just around the world. Human resources heroes are exactly what they sound like. They really are heroes. It's almost sometimes I think sometimes they're almost like superheroes, you know. They're the linchpin of organizations and ensuring that they have the ability to hire, retain, and maintain and sustain the highest quality products and services via their talented humans. Honestly, it's touching, you know. And every time we do one of the shows in this series, it's a blast for me. I love it. Love HR. And certainly enjoy it from many different angles. I teach a lot of the HR content to university graduate students. I myself, of course, have a few degrees and different aspects of the HR field and the related legal issues from the U.S. perspective and many of the international perspectives. So I just love HR. Love our HR Heroes Hangouts where we hang out and relax. Have fun. Today we have a show. Specifically, our show today is how HR helps or hurts retention in the hiring process. So how HR helps, and mostly we'll be talking about helping because we're talking about HR heroes and we're, hanging out here in this entire series. So, but we do need to mention that sometimes we have people in HR who are not. They're not HR heroes. And so those people are the ones that could sometimes hurt. They can hurt retention. In the hiring process, though, specifically, we're talking about a very narrow time frame. Let's dig in. I do encourage you to stop by CourtneyAnderson.com. We have an entire page of that website just dedicated to this show. So for our episode 183, come to the page and it'll have any additional show notes or links. It's also where, for our HR Heroes series especially, we have many sponsors for our programs, and we have a HR Direct, which is one of our primary sponsors for our HR field. So you'll see some materials from them and some ads, and I do strongly encourage you to visit those links from our show pages and explore and see if there's anything that one of our leading premier HR firms can provide for your organization. And reach out to me. Ask me if you have any specific questions about any of their products or services or any other general issues. But we've partnered certainly with HR Direct, and it's exciting, and I'm excited. And I'm also concerned because, as we mentioned in our show title, HR can help or HR can hurt. Only HR heroes are going to be consistently helping, obviously. But there could be, and it does happen, that there's someone that I don't know how they sort of wander into HR. They are not an HR hero, and they can hurt retention. So we need all the resources that we can muster to address this specific show, but just this general issue of somebody who might be, in HR and not be an HR hero, because it's something that we can't take lightly. While you're at CourtneyAnderson.com, I do also ask you to look around. We've got our blog, we have articles, we have a companion show to this, which is our television or video program, Solutions with Courtney Anderson. We've got several episodes right now available for you, and we'll be rolling out new ones coming up soon. We're going to be adding new webinars and seminars We've got a lot of material, so please, look around. I also do ask you if you access our program on iTunes or Stitcher or any other distribution channel around the world, and there's an opportunity for you to leave a review or a rating, please do so. That helps us immensely. And share our show on your social media. We would appreciate that. If there's something that might be helpful to you, it might be helpful for someone else. So, again, HR. How HR helps or hurts retention in the hiring process. Let's look big picture. One of the things that it fascinates me and that I love and that we've talked about in other HR Heroes shows, I know we talked about in our HR Heroes Hangout series show when we asked and explored how much law does an HR professional really need to know, right? And we talked about the issue that people sometimes mistake HR heroes, and they'll think, oh, HR, it's where you fill out paperwork, HR, there's some form or something. And they misunderstand that no. What might look to you like some maybe, mundane clerical issue is, oh no. Oh, no, no, no. It is absolutely the most important aspect of the entire organization. Because if you don't have the human resources that you need, then nothing else is going to work. You're not going to have the revenue. You're not going to have the constituent services. You're not going to have anything, right? No human resources, no organization. That's just the reality of it. So it may look like some of the things that the HR heroes do, are looks like paperwork or something like that, but that's just a minuscule, visible thing that you can see. What they're really doing, though, is everything. They're garnering and sustaining the human resources to allow the organization to exist. Period. End of story. From the part-time entry worker to the senior executive. That's what they're doing. So again, it's a lot of power and excitement, glamour. We always talk about when we talk to HR heroes. And if you are listening and you've been part of one of my seminars and workshops, or you've come to a SHRM meeting that I've done a keynote, then we talk about this all the time, the glamour and the excitement. And that's because we're safe here. We're in our HR Heroes Hangout, or you met me and we were doing a Society of Human Resource Management or HRD, World HRD Congress. We're amongst our group, so we can really share and sort of relax and yeah, it is awesome to be in HR. Not everyone in the public understands that, and of course not everyone should, because only going to be a select few that are going to be able to even potentially be an HR hero. And so, of course, for that all to work, where it's glamorous and exciting and awesome, is you have to have organizational support, leadership that understands this. So it doesn't always happen because you have to have the correct environment for HR to flourish. And but when it does, which you and I know as community members, it really is exciting and interesting and fun and glamorous, and in many parts of our world, it's extremely well compensated, as it should be, because it's so important. But when we look at this issue of the hiring process, and this is something that I teach in my graduate university courses, and certainly, obviously, as I said, I've done so many seminars and corporate education programs around the world. We think about the hiring, we often think, well, we've got there's going to be some sort of entity that's related to the specific job position, right? So assuming it's not an HR job position, right? Assuming it's some other position, there'll be a hiring manager, and that the HR process is sort of a complementary process, but it's not the driver. It's not the sort of the most prominent part of the hiring process, because that's going to be the hiring manager, and then whatever interviews or processes implemented by the department. But I really want in this program for us to explore the reality that that's not accurate. And I want to start by framing this as in something that I've mentioned in many of my programs, and you've so you've heard me say this before, but what's the purpose, okay, of HR? Well, human resources, right? We got to wrangle humans. We got to find some. We got to recruit them. We got to keep them. We got to, that's the retention, and we got to maintain them. So they'll get additional training and knowledge, and they'll get promotions, and they have a path for their career. So there's a lot. We have to support them. We have to also ensure that all of the mandatory requirements through whatever legal or cultural requirements are met. And then we also have to add our individual organizational, sort of optional individual policies and procedures. And we're the referee, right? When something goes right, goes right, it's awesome. Then they come to us, right? Oh, my promotion, I need to go to HR. It's on my paperwork, okay? Or when something goes, quote, wrong, we go to HR. Oh, HR, I have an issue. I want to file a complaint. Something happened. So no matter what, HR is there, as it should be, because as we said, it's really this very powerful apparatus, right? So what our mission in HR is to find first, and then keep what I sometimes generically call the good apple. The good apple is the person who fundamentally is a human. That's why we're doing human resources. Now, it may be that you work in some sort of industry where the humans then interact with other non-humans, machinery, other species, whatever. But there's some human in there somewhere making some sort of relationship with whatever non-humans that exist. I had to mention that because people say, well, let's just a focus on humans and human resources. Well, yeah, because right now we have to have some kind of human interaction, even if we're working with or in collaboration with other non-humans. All right, so here's the deal. While we're all waiting for the computers to become their own level of intelligence where then they can make their own decisions. So waiting on that, the big picture is we need the good apples. The good apples are people who literally want to be there. This is not anything complex or elaborate or difficult to memorize, but we sometimes lose sight of that. The most important part is that human wants to be there. Where? Here at our organization. If you lose sight of this, you're going to create all kind of retention problems because that's the most important part. Now, one of the reasons it becomes difficult for us to focus and remain, vigilant with this issue of do they want to be, here at our organization is because we think, well, of course they do. We're here. Right? Sort of by virtue of the fact that we're here and we're HR heroes, we could be anywhere. We choose to be here because we like it, right? Some of us love it. So since we choose to be here, we often will make the assumption that they want to be here. And then people will say to me, well, they applied for the job. That doesn't mean anything at all. For a whole bunch of reasons. One, we know that when we are applying for something that we don't know exactly what it is. We have anticipation of what we hope it would be. We might read their public material. We might have an idea of what maybe someone else that we know or knew that worked there told us, but we don't know, right? And we make this analogy to, like a first date. The person may say, hey, I definitely, totally am looking for, my long-term spouse. I am committed to that. Great. Whether or not that's going to be the person that they're out on their first date with, who knows? Right? There's a lot that needs to be answered. Now, they may be committed and say someone's going to be my long-term spouse. But it doesn't necessarily have to be this organization because they don't know you yet. And so much that happens in the interview process, of course, both sides are trying to sell each other. So the organization is trying to find that good apple, the entity, the person that really wants to be there. That's the most important part. They want it. Secondary to that are going to be their skills, their content knowledge, their expertise, and all that. Because if they don't want to be there, I don't care if they're, literally the most brilliant person in the universe at that position or in that field, they're not going to be helpful for you because they're not going to stay because they don't want to be there. And as long as they're there, they're going to be unhappy and complain, and they're going to spend a ton of your resources on dealing with the fallout from their not wanting to be there and the disruption, and then other people are unhappy because they're making them unhappy. So let's really focus on what the big picture is, which is the good apple. I need to find and keep a good apple. The good apples are the team members, the humans who want to be here. When we look at the problem with the interview process is that both sides are, selling their best version of themselves. The challenge is that both sides are also in the dark to a certain extent. the organization is saying, hey, this is the best version of us only if you're a good apple. The applicant is saying, I'm a great apple. I'm the best apple ever. My entire dream since I was 2 years old was to be part of this organization. The challenge is you don't know if that's true. It may be that it's a lie that they tell everybody. It might be on every single interview they went to. They told everybody that. It's been my dream since I was 2 years old to be part of fill in the blank. You don't know that. The other thing is they may actually think it's true because they may have a vision in their mind of what your organization is. And in their mind, that is the place they want to go. When they get there in reality and it doesn't match and there are differences between their fantasy version and what you really are, they're going to bail. They're not going to stay. And human resources, I'm going to make the argument, is as important as the hiring manager and any other part of the process, if not more important. And let me talk a little bit about why that is. So your job is to find the good apple, kind of cajole them to come to your place, and then when they get there and it is, it really is a good apple. They want to be there. You want them to be there. It's a win-win. Then you both want to, be sort of partners for as long as that lasts. Maybe for the rest of, everybody's, existence. Maybe for the rest of your organization's existence. Maybe for the rest of their life. Who knows? But we need to be vigilant at all times that that's the most important part. The good apple wants to be there. Hiring process, like I said, often they work sort of like this. There's some sort of publication of the position. All different types of apples. Good apples, the ones that want to be there, and then the bad apples are the ones that they don't want to be there. Now they may have other issues too. The bad apple may not want to be there, and then also have, maybe poor discipline, self-discipline, tardiness, who knows. But the main core difference is some group wants to be there; those are good apples, and the other group doesn't want to be there; those are bad apples. So you have some sort of publication, and human resources is very involved in this in many instances. So human resources, is it an internal to our organization posting? Is it external? Is it both? What's the time frame for this? What does the posting say? Right? So there are going to be laws wherever you are located, your organization around the world, about what you can put in a job posting, what you can't. And so all that's done. And then we often think, okay, well then HR often is part of a process where that potential applicant come through and submit whatever materials or resume or CV or whatever, and then there's some sort of process that sort of weeds through whatever is submitted. And usually technology will do more and more of that, right? So basically technology goes to look and see if whatever the person submitted matches up with your predetermined criteria. Usually they're just little keyword matching, right? I want someone who uses this software. This person says they do. Boom, it matched. Okay, so that's a very preliminary process, and it does have some effect that's helpful, right? Because if they're not even including these sort of bare minimum requirements, then yeah, we probably were going in the wrong direction. Now, of course, there's a whole separate area that I've done programs on, will continue to do, where people put together materials for their resume and their CV and their cover letter, and they don't understand. They may actually have had that software experience, but they didn't put it on there, and so that's a whole nother problem. But that's beyond what HR can do right now. That's something I work with people when they're on the applicant of making their materials be the best that they can. So HR sort of gets through that shepherding process, sort of, okay, those are the ones who had nothing that we needed, and here are the ones whose paperwork said they had some of it or more of it, and then you sort of pass that to usually some sort of departmental process where people are going to decide, okay, who we're going to take to the next step, which is usually some sort of interview. And we think, well, HR then sort of is going to just sort of wait and not really doing much. And then the whatever their internal interview process and assessment and ranking candidates and all that is finished. And then once that's all done, then that entity goes back to HR and says, hey, here's my number one choice, my number two choice, my number three choice, or whatever. And then HR, kicks into gear again, and it sort of reaches out to people and says, hey, we're HR. And, here are some additional things that you would need to do, whether, it's a job test or some parts of the world, a drug test, or there may be some other job requirement, a background check, a security clearance. And so where we sort of think that, HR is just sort of there waiting, right? While the managers and the team and whoever is doing the interviews and ranking and doing analysis. And sometimes there may be a person from HR who's part of that process. But we usually think that HR just sort of, helps sort of prepare everything, delivers the applicant pool to, this other entity. The other entity sort of sorts through it, interviews, assesses, ranks, decides, and then comes back to HR and says, hey, here are our choices, and here's what we would like you to do. And then HR again kicks in with this sort of admin and process and procedure. But we're losing sight. We're losing sight of what HR is. Again, HR is the it's the whole entire organization. No human, no organization. HR it's a tough position because they're gatekeepers, right? They're almost like sentry. And they're there and they're standing at the gate and they're doing everything in their power to fight off those bad apples. Get back, bad apple. Bad apple, you really don't want to work here. Bad apple, you're going to just come here and exploit our resources or spread misery and pain, or you really just want to come and get a little bit of knowledge and then take it and start your own competitor. I mean, who knows what that bad apple's intentions are, but HR is there guarding, warding off, Get back, bad apple. Get back. At the same time, though, HR is trying desperately, peering out into the dark, into the wild. Where's that good apple? Please, good apple, come. We want you. We'll do everything we can to be together forever, right? And so the challenge, of course, is everybody's in disguise. There are so many bad apples who intentionally, and this is not me being overly dramatic, it's intentional. They pretend to be and they masquerade as a good apple. And one of the things that this specific show today, makes me really excited about is that HR is one of the most powerful apparatus that we can use. Part of the most powerful apparatus that we can use to uncover the real apple beneath the mask. Is it a good apple or a bad apple? And this is what I mean. Okay, so like I said, we sort of generically, that's what we do, right? HR is sort of, okay, we did some sort of process. Hey, here's some people they interview. Then some other entities interview, although sometimes there may be HR involved in that, which ideally I think is great if you can, because that's usually best. And then HR, okay, now here are the applicants we'd like potentially to hire, and then they sort of get paperwork. Here's the situation. Because that's sort of generically the process, that's what the bad apple and good apple expect. Right, so the good apple and the bad apple. This includes the bad apple masquerading and pretending to be the good apple, which is the one you're really worried about. Because the bad apple who's not even pretending doesn't, they're the ones who, oh, I was late for the interview. You definitely don't want to be here. You know what I mean? Like the bad apple is not even masquerading or pretending. They already showed themselves very early on that they don't want to be there because they're not even making an effort to even come to the interview on time, or they showed up and they were disheveled, or so it's easy to find most bad apples who aren't sophisticated. The sophisticated bad apple, though, is difficult. That's why they're sophisticated and they're good at what they do. So like I said, all of the apples, good and bad, are thinking, okay, I need to get past HR or whatever gatekeeper there is at the beginning to get to the part where I can talk to whoever it is that'll be doing the hiring. And that's where I'm really going to turn it on, and show the most wonderful, fabulous, like that first date analogy, right? That's the best me I've ever been, right? That's not who I am on a daily basis, but I am going to be, the fantasy me. Okay. But this is where HR is so effective in helping and can also hurt. Because all of your apples think that the thing that they really needed to focus on was the hiring part, right? The interview, that sort of winning that group over. They'll let down their guard often when they go back to HR again, right? So the first part was sort of putting in their application or whatever, and then they got past that to the part where they could interview, and now if they go back to HR, it's usually because they're one of the finalists or the final person that's been picked to be offered the job, and they know that. And this is where our HR heroes really, like I said earlier, are superheroes. Okay, when the person comes back to HR to finish out some extra paperwork, to take any tests, things of that nature, this is where HR must be in a stealth mode. So it's stealth, right? It's not overt. I don't want HR to say to the person, "Oh, applicant, this is wonderful. Now, you've got some paperwork to fill out, and we want to talk to you a little bit more about some of our policies." And we also want you to understand that this is a continued part of the job interview, and that we're going to be assessing how you treat us and how you behave and what you say and do, and it will be determinative in whether or not you continue on as a potential preferred applicant. You don't say it. It's stealth. The reality is how that potential applicant, potentially successful applicant, relates to HR is part of the hiring process. What? Again, the bad apple who masquerades as a good apple doesn't really want to be there. Remember, that's what this distinguishing feature between good apple, bad apple is whether or not you want to be there. The bad apple really doesn't. They have some other motive. Okay, maybe they want the organization's name on the resume. Maybe they do want to come and get some of your trade secrets. Maybe they just, who knows? We really don't care. But the truth is, they really don't want to be there long term, and they're not interested in what's best for your organization at all. But they're pretending like they are. When they come back to HR to fill out whatever paperwork or do whatever else needs to be done, remember that is the most vulnerable part of the hiring process, where the bad apple in disguise will often reveal themselves. Because remember, the bad apple in disguise does know, along with the good apple, everyone is focused on, I got to ace the interview, I got to do my best on that. Okay, so they're putting all their energy into that. When they get back to HR, many of them I'm going to say this, the good apple wants to be there, and because of that, they want to be there across the board. So they're going to be just as polite and engaged and interested in HR as they are in all of it, because they want the whole kit and caboodle. In other words, they want the whole thing. If somebody's lifelong dream is to work at Walt Disney, which is a global brand, right? We all know Disney with their products and services and history and their theme parks. Okay, so let's say it's somebody's dream since they were 2 years old, seriously, to be working at Disney. And that happens. I've met people who, honestly, that's true. I've worked and done some training with partners who are located on Disney properties, right, and have some Disney relationship in their day-to-day business. And so I've met and talked to people who really tell me this was my dream my whole life, and they're serious. If somebody wants to work at Disney, then yeah, they're going to be really focused on that interview, doing their best. And when they get back to talk to HR, they're still excited because guess what? It's Disney. I went through an appointment as a faculty member for a full-time position, which I've never done in my entire life. I just did this, as the time of the show very recently, right? So I'm, never in my life have I gone to HR as a full-time employee and listened and had all this interesting information, because I've never done that. I've always been self-employed, and I've had contracts with all different types of organizations, but I've never had something where I went to HR to talk about, the benefits and their policies or any of that, because I've never been in any categorized position where I was seen as a full-time employee or was one in any way. So it was exciting, right? And I was so excited, because I'd never done this, and it was really exciting. I remember so I went through sort of this HR discussion, and they're all this kind of stuff, right? Like, how do you fill out, whatever paperwork and this policy there and all this kind of stuff. And I was so excited that, of course, it's coming through, and I'm asking all these questions, and then the person from HR said something along the lines of to me, I've never had anybody this excited over, the paperwork and all this. And I said, but how could I not be, right? Like, this is really exciting. It was, and I mean it. It really is. Especially coming from my position where I've never been in a full-time job. So I've never even had a discussion with anybody about what your sick leave policy is or any of this stuff. I've never had it. So it was all like a whole new world, and it's all really interesting, and I'm fascinated. I'm really excited and fired up. So I'm giving this analogy to an imaginary person who's gone to the company of their dreams. And I just gave Disney because it's a global brand, and like I said, I have some personal anecdotal experience where really I've met people who honestly this is how they, there really was their lifelong dream, and now they're doing it. It doesn't even matter to them often what it is, because they just want to get there in the organization. They feel like if I get in there, then I can, meet other people and work my way up. So I don't care if it's a low level job or whatever. Like I want to get, that's my dream. So they treat HR just as excited as I did in real life when I had my opportunity to hear about all the stuff that to me was really exciting and awesome. Policies and leave and all this kind of stuff. It's interesting, and I'm fired up. I've never even had a discussion like this as an employee. Right? I mean, I know all these things and I've taught them and experienced them, and I've, as a small business owner, but I've never been the person on the receiving end, and it was all, I thought, awesome. So when you have the bad apple who masquerades and pretended to be a good apple, you remember they don't really want to be there. It wasn't their real dream. They may have lied and said it was, but it isn't. And this is where you're going to most likely find them when they go back to HR. How do they talk to people in HR? So if they come and you're saying, oh, hi, I'm with HR and I'm calling because we need to go ahead and set a time for you to come in and fill this paperwork out. Oh, I'm really busy. I don't understand. You can't do this any way that's easier for me. I got to go all the way back over there. Okay, here we go. How they speak to you, how they behave. All of this is, I want you to understand, part of the interviewing process, and it is the most important part for being able to discern a bad apple that is masquerading in disguise as a good apple, because they will often drop that facade that they really want to be there with HR because they feel like they've already gotten where they want to go, right? They feel like, hey, I wouldn't be back at HR unless I'm going to be offered the job, or I've conditionally been offered the job, pending me filling out all this paperwork or whatever. So by the time they're talking to HR, or they have been offered the job, right? Conditioned upon them filling out all the HR paperwork and everything. Okay. But they often don't think of it like that. They feel like, hey, I already won. I put my masquerade on. I went in there in disguise and I tricked all those people, and now it's done. So I don't have to pretend as much. But the HR, they're just some hassle. They're just a little thing on the side, ancillary, with some stupid paperwork that's an inconvenience to me. I've already won. And they're so busy celebrating that they're going to drop their guard. And they're going to let that mask slip, and you're going to find out really quickly that they're speaking to you rudely, that they're late, that they don't care, that they're short-tempered, that they're not who they pretended to be. And guess what? That's where HR is going to be most helpful, our HR heroes, because we ahead of time will have set up this culture and process where we explained and trained all of the hiring managers and panel interview members, and explained to them that the job isn't the job until every single thing is completed. And in many parts of the world, with somebody who, remember, these people haven't started their job yet, right? So in many parts of the world, the person hasn't started yet. There's going to be some opportunity in many parts of the world legally to rescind or to shorten or to modify a potential job offer, because they haven't even, it's not like they came and they worked there for 2 years and then HR said, well, I remember now that when they came back to fill out some of the paperwork in the hiring process that they yelled and they were rude and mean and stuff, and now now it's too late. I'm talking about ahead of time. This is planned. It's intentional. Because we know, is what we're discussing right now, is that the bad apple who really doesn't want to be there, who pretended like they did, that's where they're going to slip. And they're going to reveal that behind the mask is a bad apple, and that they really aren't that interested. It wasn't their dream. They're not authentically excited, and how they're going to be dismissive and rude and condescending, and they're going to start to show themselves. And my point is, that is our leverage, because what's the retention? It's keeping good apples, right? The easiest way to keep a good apple is to surround them with other good apples. You bring one bad apple into the organization who doesn't want to be there, and what they'll do, and they do it incredibly well, is they will make the environment so toxic that the good apples who loved it, who it was their lifelong dream, eventually they'll leave. Because the complaining and the whining and the backstabbing and the dishonesty and the lack of of communication and the unequal work distribution. I mean, the bad apple will run off good apples. They'll run them off. They'll make a good apple who's been there for 20 years leave eventually. My point is, you cannot afford them, and you must be vigilant. I said earlier, this is your only job in HR, but it's hard. It's the hardest thing, because you're dealing with people who are in disguise, and they're intentionally doing everything they can to deceive you. And I'm saying that use to your advantage the fact that most people globally view HR as, again, this sort of thing that's, paperwork doesn't really a big deal. I don't really, it's not that important. Use that to your advantage. Use it. Yeah. Oh, this is just about the paperwork. But it really isn't, because it's part of the evaluation process. I'm saying it's part of that extended hiring process. Because how they treat the people in HR, I don't care if it's the part-time, entry level, lowest wage, uh, admin front desk person in HR. They're rude and nasty to that person. That's the truth. That's who they are, and that's what you're going to get when you bring them on. If you brought them on board, but now you won't, because they just revealed themselves. Now, like I said, this is stealth. You don't tell them this, but we are talking about it right now because we need to exploit it. It's a strategic advantage. And you're going to use to your advantage the fact that people often will, oh, HR is just some sort of, thing I don't really need to pay attention to. Right. Hide behind that. And then they'll think, oh, well, I won over who I needed to win over, right? I tricked and deceived that hiring panel. I went through 4 interviews and I still tricked them. Yeah. But they let their guard down. So whenever I talk to HR heroes and they say, yeah, it was unbelievable. We had to, go back to the person 4 times and ask them to turn the paperwork in. What does that show you? They don't want to be there. They don't take it seriously. All of this is revealed, and it's sort of a weakness in the bad apple in disguise. It's a weakness in their system because they overlook it. And what I'm saying to you and you're HR heroes. Of course, we're hanging out. That's what the series is. And the show is about how you're going to help, which is what you're mostly doing, or hurt, retention. And we just answered it. And what I'm saying to you is you need to be really strategic about this. Everyone in HR needs to understand, and all of the hiring individuals and entities need to understand that HR part where they sort of come back and they think, oh, it's just a formality. No, it isn't. It is everything. Because that's where you're very vigilant. Very vigilant to look and see, did one of these, and I'm not kidding, exceptionally talented masters of disguise, the bad apple pretending to be the good apple, did they slip by you? And the honest truth is that every organization in the world, I don't care how elite you are, has suffered from this. The more elite and amazing and exceptional your organization is, the more attractive you are to a bad apple. So yeah, you're continually bombarded by them, coming up with new disguises and new tricks and new ways to try to get past you. And what I'm saying is, by using this, they're already pre-existing stereotypes. Exploit that to your advantage. And so the report from HR back to the hiring managers needs to be part of your process. And, it needs to be, yes, oh, wow, it was great. The person showed up early on time. They had a really good attitude. They communicated well, a good eye contact. They're very respectful of everyone in the department. Their paperwork was complete. It was correct, and, it was submitted the right way the first time. This is, we sign off. We're going to sign off on our final part of this interview process. Or it will be, hey, we had a difficult time getting them to follow up with us. They turned in, incomplete work. They were very rude to the people in the HR department on the phone. They were short-tempered, and we don't encourage that. This should be the applicant that moves forward. Is there another applicant, maybe the second or third ranking, that we could talk to? Because this extra check is imperative. Remember, we must exploit their pre-existing prejudice, which is absolutely inaccurate, that HR is just some silly paperwork, and understand that their guard is down. And how they treat the least among your organization in terms of rank and privilege is going to be indicative of how they're going to treat everybody. Because over time, what they'll do, the bad apple, is they'll pretend. I mean, it's intentional. So the person they think has power, they're going to put this wonderful disguise on, and oh yes. But everybody else who they don't think is worth it, they're not going to even bother with the disguise. My point is, once they'll reveal that very early. They're going to reveal this in this part here of the extended hiring process when they go back to HR, because they're thinking, what do I care about this part-time front desk, low hourly wage person in the HR department bugging me about some stupid paperwork or some form? I don't care. Right. That's exactly the point. They don't care. And they don't care about working there. And you cannot bring them on because they're going to poison the entire group and they're going to make good apples leave. But you have to use this strategy and then use the beauty of this pre-existing prejudice stereotypes that HR is some sort of silly clerical side issue. Use it to your advantage. So all this, of course, has to be agreed to, trained, and disseminated ahead of time. But when you do this, you're going to find it incredibly effective because HR is that extended interview process, that assessment of that person who thinks they've won, thinks that they've already succeeded. And their approval or their lack of approval and asking if there's another applicant that you can send over is going to save the organization untold amounts of pain and resources. And you're also protecting your good apples. Remember, all good apples want to do is be there. And if they're with other people who want to be there, then you can often work with someone who might have a skill deficiency. You can also work with someone who might just not have the work experience that they need and help them understand what's the expectation. But if you have somebody who doesn't want to be there, I don't care what you do. There's nothing you can do to change it. And that core fundamental, problem that they don't want to be there will destroy your good apples. It will destroy your department. And it can destroy whole organizations. You must remember this because all the other issues are going to get poor management, poor communication, backstabbing, office politics, sabotage, criminal acts, right? It's much easier for somebody who doesn't want to be there, totally doesn't care, to steal or lie or misrepresent or falsify records or whatever. They don't care. That was the whole point. So I really do hope that you think about this and understand that this is a beautiful and wonderful way, of course, within whatever legal framework and within whatever policy and procedures that you have. But I would strongly recommend you do some version of this at every level. At the very beginning, how did the person act the first time they interacted with HR? Oh, here's my interview. Here's my application. I can't believe this location. Traffic's horrible. I hate it here. There's not any better parking. Okay, look, if that's how they were about that, turning in their paperwork to potentially be considered as an applicant, why on earth would you honestly want to consider hiring them? They already have a bad attitude. They're already complaining. Already. See? That is extremely helpful. All this information, HR is again, it's it's almost like somebody who's working in intelligence, right? Because actually that's what you're managing human resources. So you are actually, obviously. But think of it almost like, they're there and it's part of their job. So another thing I'm saying is not known. It's just that most applicants, and certainly bad apples, they don't think of it that way. They think, well, HR is diminished. It's not that important. I need to go find the real person I need to impress, and I'll pretend to put a mask on in front of them. But then these silly people at some stupid office bothering me about paperwork, I don't really care. Yeah, you don't care. That's why we want to unveil that as soon as possible, so you don't get past us. So this is it. We've talked about it. We've shared it. I do, again, HR Heroes see, they underestimate us. And it's to our advantage. And I really enjoyed sharing some of this with you. So again, I encourage you to come to CourtneyAnderson.com. I also ask you to visit our HR Direct partner. You'll see the links on our show pages, and leave ratings or reviews for our show on iTunes or Stitcher or anywhere else that you're receiving our program. And reach out to me. Let me know what you think. Tell me if you've used this technique and it's worked, or some suggestions you have to improve it, or how to better train managers and help them understand that the managers, I don't understand why it mattered how they treated people in HR. Oh, because it's everything. Because this is our whole organization, and how they treat us in HR is indicative of the real way they're going to treat everybody else, right? So this is a very powerful, and you can see, very low cost tool because it already is there. They already are interacting with HR. It's already built in. There's nothing extra. You're just working with HR. Your team members understand this is a lot of what you're doing. Right? So it's beautiful, and it's one of the things that we can continue to do to be creative and have integrated communication in our organization to ward off that bad apple. And that bad apple will do everything they can to sneak in and trick us, because it's their job. It's what they do. And I'm not saying they don't have the right to do that. I'm just saying that they're going to have to do that somewhere else, because they're not going to do it with your organization. And that's why you're an HR hero. Thank you for being part of a program today.